Why do so many Japanese homes, even quite small ones, seem to have a certain quietness to them? Not empty, not cold, not lifeless. Just quiet. You might see a narrow kitchen, a compact hallway, or a living room that has to work as several different rooms in one day. And still, it doesn't feel immediately chaotic. The space seems to have room to breathe. Your eyes aren't fighting through piles of things, half-finished jobs, and little objects that don't seem to belong anywhere. From the outside, it's easy to explain this badly. We might think people simply have more time, or that their homes are always perfectly tidy, or that there's some strict standard being followed, where every surface is spotless and every cupboard looks like a display in a shop. But that isn't the useful part. Real homes are real homes. Meals get cooked. Washing builds up. Children leave things on the floor. Adults come home tired, carrying bags, coats, receipts, keys, parcels, and all the small mess that follows an ordinary day. So the difference usually isn't perfection. It's that some of the small decisions have already been made. This goes here. That has a limit. This surface has a purpose. The day ends with a small reset. There are quiet rules that stop the home from filling up with too much visual noise. And visual noise is more tiring than most of us realize. A cluttered room doesn't just take up space. It keeps asking you questions. Where should this go? Do I still need that? Why is this here? Should I deal with it now? Have I forgotten something? Is this mess my fault? One question like that is nothing, but when those questions are spread across the kitchen counter, the hallway floor, the dining table, the bedside table, and the chair in the corner that has quietly become a wardrobe, the room starts to feel busy even when nobody is doing anything. It creates a low hum in the background. This is where Kaizen becomes useful. Kaizen is often translated as continuous improvement, but in daily life it doesn't need to mean constant self-improvement or endlessly trying to optimize everything. It can be much simpler than that. It can mean making one small part of daily life easier to repeat, not redesigning the whole home in a weekend, not buying a new storage system because the old one made you feel guilty, just noticing one repeated irritation and making it a little lighter. So the calmness we sometimes notice in Japanese-inspired homes is not really about having less life inside the house. It's about having fewer unresolved decisions lying around. The first tiny rule is to keep surfaces as clear as they reasonably can be. Surfaces have a strange influence on how a room feels. The kitchen counter, the dining table, the top of a chest of drawers, the little shelf by the front door. The moment one random object lands there, it seems to give permission for others to join it. A receipt sits beside the kettle, then a hair clip, then a letter you haven't opened, then a water bottle that belongs upstairs. By the evening, the surface has become a sort of waiting room for decisions. And because it's visible, you feel it every time you pass. The Japanese-inspired approach is not to make every surface bare in a severe, uncomfortable way. A home doesn't need to look like nobody lives there. The point is to stop surfaces becoming accidental storage. A kitchen counter is mainly for preparing food. A dining table is for eating, working, or gathering. A bedside table might hold a lamp, a book, and a glass of water. Once a surface has a clear job, it becomes much easier to notice when something has drifted there without a reason. The practical version is simple. Choose one surface that often collects clutter and give it a quiet rule. The dining table is cleared before bed. The kitchen counter only holds things used every day. The hallway shelf is just for keys and outgoing post. Nothing elaborate, just a boundary. This works quickly because surfaces are what your eyes meet first. Before you open a cupboard or inspect a drawer, you feel the room through what is visible. When the main surfaces are calm, the whole room tends to feel calmer. The second rule is that every item needs a clear place to return to. This sounds almost too obvious. But many homes are full of things that don't really have a home. They have places they sometimes end up, but not a place they return to. The tape measure moves from the drawer to the shelf to the table. The phone charger travels around the house. Shopping bags are dropped wherever there happened to be space. The spare batteries, the scissors, the umbrella, the reusable water bottle, they all seem to live in motion. The issue is not that people are naturally messy. Often, a home is simply asking them to make the same decision again and again. Where does this go? A clear place removes that little decision. In many Japanese-inspired home systems, storage is not only about hiding things away, it's about return. The item comes out, does its job, and goes back to the same place with very little thought. That matters more than it sounds. Because when you're tired, distracted, or in a hurry, you won't follow a complicated system. Most people don't. You'll follow whatever path is easiest. So the place for an item should usually be close to where it is used. Mugs near the kettle, cleaning cloths near the sink, bags near the door, remote controls in one small tray, school items in one predictable area instead of scattered between the hallway, kitchen, and living room. A good home for an object is not always the prettiest place. It's the place where you will actually put it back. And when more things have obvious homes, tidying becomes less emotional. It doesn't feel like a huge act of discipline. It becomes a series of small returns. This goes here. That goes there. Done. The third rule is not to buy something unless you know where it will live. This is a quiet rule, but it changes a lot. Most clutter does not arrive looking like clutter. It arrives looking helpful, or beautiful, or cheap, or comforting, or like something that might make life slightly better. A new kitchen gadget, a jumper on sale, a set of storage baskets, a candle, a spare cable, a book you hope you'll read, another notebook because this one feels like the right one. None of these things feels like a problem when you buy it. The problem begins later when it enters a home that has no space ready for it. Then the home has to absorb it. It sits on the side for now. It gets pushed into a drawer. It joins a cupboard that already takes a small act of bravery to open. Slowly, it becomes part of the background pressure of the house. The Kaizen version of shopping is not strict minimalism. It's not about denying yourself ordinary pleasures or only owning the bare minimum. It's simply asking one practical question before something comes in. Where will this live? Not just, do I like it? Not just, is it useful? Not just, is it a good price? Those questions matter, of course, but they don't finish the decision. A thing can be useful and still create friction if it has nowhere to belong. So before buying a slow cooker, a coat, a plant pot, a set of towels, or a new organizer for things you haven't sorted yet, picture its exact place. If there isn't one, the real cost is not only the money, it's the space it will occupy, the maintenance it will need, and the decisions it will keep creating. This rule helps a home stay calmer because it moves the decision to the doorway. You are not waiting until clutter has settled in and become hard to remove. You are stopping some of it before it enters. The fourth rule is to tidy one small point, not the whole room. This is where many people get stuck. They look at a messy room and think, I need to sort all of this out. And instantly the task becomes too big. A whole room contains too many categories, too many delayed choices, too many small bits of guilt, too many things that belong somewhere else. Your mind looks at the size of it and quietly starts looking for an escape. So you avoid it. A smaller rule is usually more useful. Tidy the chair, clear the sink, reset the coffee table, empty one bag. Put away only the shoes by the door. Deal with the post, not the entire hallway. This is very close to the spirit of Kaizen. Improve the smallest visible point. Make one part of the environment a little better than it was 10 minutes ago. There's a behavioral reason this works. Starting is often harder than continuing. A small point gives your mind an easy entrance. You're not committing to a full afternoon of cleaning. You're only returning one corner to order. And once that one point is clear, the room often feels less impossible. You can see the next step more easily. Think of the kitchen after dinner. If you tell yourself you need to clean the whole kitchen, you might delay it until you're too tired. But if the rule is simply, clear the sink, you know where to begin. Plates into the dishwasher or washed by hand. Food scraps gone. Sink wiped. Then the counter suddenly looks more manageable. Maybe you do more, maybe you don't. But the kitchen has already recovered a little. The aim is not to trick yourself into doing everything. The aim is to make order easier to start. The fifth rule is to prioritize a clear floor. In a small home, the floor is not just the floor. It shapes how the whole room feels in your body. A room can have a few things on shelves and still feel calm. But once the floor is covered with shoes, bags, laundry, toys, parcels, and stray cables, the space begins to feel tense. You have to step around things. You move differently. You become slightly careful in your own home. And even when you're not thinking about it directly, you notice the obstacles. This creates a physical version of mental load. A clear floor gives the home back a sense of space, even if the room is modest. It also makes cleaning easier, which matters. Vacuuming or mopping is much less of a job when you don't first have to move 20 things out of the way. The practical rule is to treat the floor as movement space, not storage space. Shoes need a rack, a basket, or a clear limit near the door. Bags need hooks or one landing zone. Laundry needs a basket that is easy to reach, not a vague pile beside the bed. Children's toys can have one open box that makes returning them simple enough to actually happen. The goal is not to keep the floor empty every minute of the day. That would be unrealistic in many homes. Things will land there. Life happens there. The point is that the floor should be easy to reset. When the floor clears quickly, the room recovers quickly. And when the room recovers quickly, you don't feel as if the house is constantly slipping away from you. The sixth rule is to end the day with a light reset. Not a deep clean. Not a late-night punishment. Not wiping skirting boards at 10:30 because someone online made you feel as if your home should always be ready for inspection. A light reset is just a short return to baseline. It might take 5 minutes. It might take 10. The aim is to remove the most obvious leftovers from the day, so tomorrow does not begin with yesterday's decisions. Put the cups in the sink or dishwasher, fold the blanket, return the remote, clear the dining table, put the shoes back, set tomorrow's bag near the door, wipe the kitchen counter if it needs it. There is something quietly kind about this habit. You are not trying to create a perfect home before bed. You are reducing the number of small demands waiting for you in the morning. And mornings are sensitive. The first few minutes at home can color the day more than we expect. If you walk into a kitchen covered in old mugs, crumbs, and unopened post, your mind starts the day already behind. But if the room has been lightly reset, there is less to push against. The reset also works because it has a boundary. It is not clean until everything is finished. It is restore the few things that matter most. For one person, that might be the kitchen sink. For another, it might be the sofa and coffee table. For a family, it might be the entrance area, because that is where the morning can become difficult very quickly. The best reset is personal. It protects the part of the home that most affects the next day. And this is the larger lesson behind all 6 rules. A calm home is not usually created by one heroic clean. It is created by reducing the number of decisions that repeat every day. Clear surfaces reduce what your eyes have to process. Clear homes for objects remove the question of where things go. Buying only when you know the place prevents clutter at the source. Tidying one small point makes order easier to begin. Keeping the floor clear gives your body room to move. A light evening reset stops yesterday from spilling too heavily into tomorrow. None of these rules is dramatic. That is probably why they work. They are small enough to repeat when life is ordinary. And most of life is ordinary. Busy, slightly tired, full of interruptions, and rarely arranged around a perfect afternoon for getting everything sorted. We often think a peaceful home needs better design, more storage, expensive furniture, or a bigger space. Sometimes those things help. Of course they do. But they are not the foundation. The foundation is the removal of tiny daily frictions. The object with no home. The surface that collects everything. The purchase that had nowhere to go. The floor that makes you step carefully. The morning that begins with decisions you were too tired to make the night before. When those frictions are reduced, the home starts to feel different. Not perfect. Not staged. Just easier to live in. And perhaps that is the most useful way to think about order. Not as something you achieve once and then protect anxiously, but as something you return to gently through small rules that make the next right action more obvious. Peace in a home rarely comes from having nothing in it. It comes from having fewer things asking for your attention, fewer decisions waiting in plain sight, and a few quiet systems that help the day settle back into place.